So, what is effective PR? It's the kind of question that the industry's been trying to answer for years and years. And if you talk to most PR agencies, they'll tell you it's coverage or it's awareness. If you can get to more people, then the higher the chances that you have of selling a product or a service. The better known you are, the chances of you actually making money is going to increase, which isn't really true. You can get 10 million page impressions on a website, but if there are 10 million people that have no interest in buying your product or service, you're unlikely to convert very many of them. So they can know about your business, but if they're not the right audience, if you can't give them the right message to tell them they should choose your business over one of your competitors, or if the value that you see in the business isn't the value that they see in the business, it's very difficult to convert any one of those 10 million people. So it's not about getting out to as many people as possible. What I think that effective PR is the right message to the right audience at the right time and using the most appropriate channel. If you can get all of these things right, the chances of getting a sale, or getting, a lot of people talked about referral-based businesses where it's word of mouth. If you can do all of these things, the chances of you converting it are much greater than simply hitting hundreds, thousands, millions of people. It'll also mean that there's less work in trying to make sense of communicating to a larger group of people. And it also means that you can add real value, you can communicate the value much more effectively to a smaller targeted audience than you can if you're going after a mass market. So what I want to look at over the next hour or so is run through and talk about some of these areas. It was interesting going through your elevator pitches and hearing that a lot of you have very clear ideas about who your audience is, and that's a really good place to be, because arguably that's the most important part of the whole jigsaw. If you can figure that out, you're steps ahead of the majority of your competitors that are just trying to market to as many people as they can, hoping that they find the right people. So the first part of building a strategy is the right audience. There's a saying in business that it's not about owning an industry, it's about owning a niche. It's about finding that section of the market that you can communicate to that actually has real interest in your product, that sees the value, that has the money, that will understand the value and will then tell other similar people. Because it's great having one person telling 100 people, but if only one of those 100 people is like them, you've either got to start marketing to them again, or you've got to find that one person, and filtering through and actually getting to that takes time. So if you can find people as a small group of people as initial customers that are your ideal customers, they're the right age group potentially, they're the right culture, they're the right income bracket, they're the right people that they'll get the value from the product that will help to sell it to other people in that group, then that's really where you're going to get the most effective results from the campaign. So go niche will be one of the things. Find the niche and mine that niche, rather than trying to go for a big market and then hoping you'll find your customers within that. Another thing that a lot of marketing campaigns do is it's scattergun, because they don't understand who the market is, or because they're trying to hit lots of different markets at once. They've got a product that appeals to a broad audience, and they don't segment. It's very difficult to stay focused. you can do little bits and pieces. So.
I find when doing research and you're looking at your competitors, there's so many competitors in the same field, but they have a particular area in which they want to focus in. So it kind of sometimes allows you to go astray because you have to really find what your focus is and the type of people versus, yes, I have this business, and there's lots of people doing the same business, but they have particular things that make them different, right?
It happens a lot. I mean, it's one of the things that, depending on your approach to business, and you hear various entrepreneurs talking, some are obsessive about the competition. They're obsessive about where they're getting business from, about their marketing strategies, about what they're doing. Others don't care. This is my proposition, this is the value that I bring, this is my product, this is my audience. I understand who the people are that I'm trying to make customers and the people that I need to influence in order to make that happen. And I don't care what the competition are doing. So there are two ways of thinking on it. I'm very much, I don't care what the competition are doing. I understand what I'm trying to do. I understand who my market is. I understand how I need to communicate to them. I understand that there may be other there may be other opportunities, but at the heart, my core customer is very clear. And I think that's one of the things that if you can stay focused on that, understand how long it might take in order to convert prospects into customers using a campaign, a dedicated PR and marketing plan. But while you're doing it, spend 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever the time period is, and focus on that one market. Because if you can convert people within that target market, it's far easier to have them help you to convert others that are like them, rather than you find one customer in one segment of the market, another in another with a different value proposition, third one, a fourth one, a fifth one. Each time you've got to be going through the process to develop a strategy to actually communicate value to those different people. Whereas if you stay focused, repetition's important, but it's about making sure that people that get value and are your customers are actually communicating that proposition to people that are like them. People surround themselves with people that are like them. Have the same sets of views, same ethics, same requirements, same interests in terms of products and services. If you go to a hair salon, you get a good service, you like it, you're far more likely to tell your friends that looking for a similar thing than if you're trying to find salons independently. You'll tell people that you recommend this one. They're far more likely to go to it because it comes with your recommendation, because you've seen the value, you've got the service and the outcome that you wanted. So it's difficult to stay focused, especially also when there are so many ways to communicate with people nowadays. You look on Twitter or Facebook. A lot of companies take the approach, certainly with startups in tech, with apps or with websites or web-based ones, that everyone's their customer. And whilst that might be true, it's unlikely to be an effective way to market the business, because you're going after such a big audience, you can't effectively communicate anything to anyone. I'll give you an example. If you take one of Canada's main newspapers, it's got a 300,000 circulation every week. You think you've got customers that are likely to be in that 300,000 group. But if you there's a rule in sales, it's a 5% rule, where if you send out a piece of information via email or you send it out in the mail, you've got 5%. 5% of the people that you send it to are likely to actually open it. Of that 5% that open it, 5% are likely to read it. 5% of that 5% are likely to actually have an interest or a need for the product at the time which you send that message to them, or you send the content to them. And 5% of that 5% are going to actually be interested enough to pick up the phone or to click a link or to actually go and find out more information. So you think 300,000 people, if you Globe and Mail or Toronto Star, you've got a fairly big addressable audience there. But then, if you apply the 5% rule, you're actually talking to 7.5 people. 7.5 people of those 300,000 people are actually people that will take action, and they won't even become customers. They're the people that will actually want more information, and they'll do something, pick up the phone, they'll send you an email, they'll kind of request more information. So rather than going after the 300,000 people where you've got to find those 7.5 and you've got to say something which appeals to all of those 7.5 people, why not develop something which talks directly to those 7.5 people?
That's kind of true what you're saying, because I go to the mail every day, and because you can access our mail, you actually open it with the keys. We have a garbage bin, and as I open my mail, I can tell what's in my mail before I even get there. People are throwing it in the garbage, people flyers. And I think about this, how much money you spend on your flyer. You send it out the same way he says, and you think you get this bunch of people that's going to come out, send 1,000. Half of it, not even half of it, say 99.9% of it is in the garbage, because I see it every day. And if we're doing it in our building, could imagine the rest of the building that they deliver these flyers, and I'm thinking people just spend about $1 million plus with their flyers.
Yeah.
And people aren't reading them because some of them come sealed. They're thrown right in the garbage.
Yeah.
And that made me decide that that's something, that route, I would not want to go that route for my business.
Well, it's one of the things where I get customers, and it happened more with when I worked in agencies, because I was working to somebody else's rules, and I was doing a lot of media relations stuff, and you'd end up with media lists of 100 people. So why have you got 100 people on there? Well, because everyone's got a certain interest. There's a story for each one of them. It's like, okay, but how many of them? Which ones would you really want to be in? Which ones are going to be the critical ones that are going to make a difference to your business? And very few companies understood that if I've got a list of 100 people and they're paying for 4 hours of my time, if I'm targeting 100 people, I've got 1/100th of that 4 hours to speak to each journalist. Whereas if I've got 5, I've got almost an hour to dedicate to each one of those key people, which means that I can do a little bit of research. I can find out how I make it interesting and relevant to those journalists. You find out to the customers, you find out the prospects. How do you make it relevant? You spend more time and more money on the few people than trying to just do something which covers a larger number. I also, I'm getting some business cards done that are different to the standard ones that I have. And 3 of the 4 people that I spoke to about getting them printed said, you don't want to spend that amount of money on business cards, it's stupid. They're like $3 per card. And I said, but it's $3. If I can't afford to spend $3 on people that are really going to be, potential customers, if all I spend is $3 convincing them that they need to go to my website and that there's actually something of value I can do to help them, that's quite a cheap cost of sale. But it's about, understanding and finding who those 7.5 are, or the small group of people out of the total audience that's there. I know a lot of people are talking about having specific cultural audiences, and it's if you can actually focus on that rather than trying to focus on the GTA as a whole audience, you've got far more chance, and geographically as well. You know that in certain parts of the town, certain cultures are prevalent. So by focusing effort in those areas, understanding that from a certain culture, Neil was saying about learning a language. Spend some time actually developing marketing in the language of the spoken by the culture that you're trying to turn into customers, because you could do it in English, because a lot of English is the default language. And I always say that as being from England and having lived in Europe, we get lazy because we assume that everyone else will communicate in our language. But most other countries in Europe take the approach that they need English because most people speak it, but then they also speak 3 or 4 other languages as well, because they have neighbours on different sides that speak different languages, and they want to be able to communicate effectively with all of them. And the best sales guys that I ever saw, the best marketing campaigns that I worked on, were in multiple languages. because it was communicating, it was making it easy for people that spoke that language as a first language to do business with them. And it showed that they cared. They cared enough to actually get a poster or a brochure or a website that was developed in that language. So understanding who the target audience is, going very, very niche, understanding who your target audience is in some detail and focusing on them, finding those 7.5 people is one of the most important things for establishing any plan. Because once you've done that, everything else becomes much simpler, because you can actually test the messages, you can test the timing, you can test the delivery mechanism against those 7.5 people.
Yeah, I just want to say something about that, which is very true. Targeting just a group, a little group of people that you really know that are familiar and that experience. Because last weekend I was having a yard sale and it rained. But one thing I noticed was on Friday, even though I put out the flyers, and I know most people throw some away and all that, but I went to Shoreham because my yard sale was going to be in Shoreham. I stood in the center of Shoreham and got interaction with the people, giving them the flyers and interacting with them. And amazingly, that worked. Because in the midst of the rain, I was right there, I opened the garage, it was raining, I was sitting right there at 7 o'clock. And amazingly, the customers were coming through. And so I was there to talk to them again. And amazingly, most people that couldn't turn up were calling on the phone, which gave me another chance to have phone numbers of the ones that I don't have.
Yeah.
So I found that interacting with those few people at that area really brought out a large output. Even though the last say couldn't come on, they communicated back with me.
And that's the thing is, the next point is get involved by understanding who the audience is, by knowing who they are, who the prospects are, and who's likely to become customers. You can actually get involved with them on a personal level. It's one of these things that people talk about social media being this kind of miracle for business. You can spend an awful lot of time, an awful lot of money, and get very little results because it's still putting a barrier between you and prospective customers. And there's nothing quite like face-to-face. People buy from people. They don't buy from businesses. That's why a lot of the big businesses now have characters, personas that they use in order to sell stuff, because it gives them that ability to have a one-on-one relationship with customers. So I think that's absolutely right. It's by knowing who the audience is, you can engage with them, you can get involved in them, and they get to see you. And certainly with small businesses, one of the big things is passion. Passion sells an awful lot. It opens an awful lot of doors because people can look in your eyes and they can see that you believe what you say. Rather than you sending a flyer that says, I really want you as a customer, I really want to do, you want them enough to send them something in the mail. Whereas actually, if you pick up the phone, you go and see them, you spend time at events and in the communities where they are, it speaks volumes. It says that you matter. It matters enough for you to spend time to actually go and listen to them, to talk with them, to hear what they have to say. And it's one of the things that I've learned. Growing my business, is the first business that I've grown. There's nothing like hearing people's feedback. So you go and I do the elevator pitch, and people says, "Well, what do you mean by that? So how does that?" I could write it on a website. I could send a letter to them. I could kind of send them a piece of collateral that answers that question. But actually getting that question, okay, so, but what do you mean? How does that different from one of your competitors? Having that ability to hear it, to learn it, to answer it, but then also to use that information in the stuff that I do, online and in the marketing stuff that I do, is invaluable. One of the other things, it sounds like I'm down on kind of online and social media, and I'm not at all. I think it has a place. But one of the things that you can do online now, which is far easier than it has ever been, and it's a complement to actually getting involved in person, is being involved online now with discussions, debates, with conversations that are taking place with your target audience. We've all got sites where people that are customers, prospects, people that are like us in terms of having business that we're competing against. Getting involved in those discussions is key part of marketing, and getting yourself known, because you can show an awful lot of knowledge as part of answering questions if you can't do it face to face. Doing it online and being helpful and offering answers to people's questions that shows that you can actually help them, and that they might want to give you money to get a little bit more personal detail, or to kind of the products that they want to buy. But it's all about being involved. It's all about having that two-way conversation. It goes back to the definition of PR at the start. It's mutually beneficial, and it's about building relationships. You can't be mutually beneficial if all you're doing is selling, and also you don't really have a relationship if it's only online, if it's one-dimensional. A relationship isn't that you have their email address and you keep sending them emails or flyers every month, every 2 months, every 3 months. It's about having that mutual side of listening to what they're saying, and then adapting what it is you're doing, how you're positioning your business to them, in order to demonstrate that there is the value that they believe that you can bring is actually what you're offering. Talked a little bit about that, so I won't talk too much about it. Feel their pain. One of the things about value is understanding how you can relieve something that they're struggling with, and that's from the engagement. It's from listening to them. It's from having the conversations. It's from doing some research and finding out what is it that you can offer them which helps them solve a problem. If you can help them solve a problem, help them do something better, you can help them to get something which they can't get otherwise, you're far more likely to close the sale more quickly, because you can demonstrate that the value is that you actually solve something which they're struggling with. I forget your name. The lady was saying that you're selling clothes to Muslim community, saying that it's fashionable, and you're actually if you can provide them with clothes that they can't get from other competitors, you're helping them to adhere to the cultural dress, but still remain stylish and fashionable. Which it's one of those things that if you understand what the demand is, what the need is, you can actually cater to it, and depending on what they're looking for in one season or another, and how the fashion changes, you can actually help them by providing them with clothes that are in keeping with the way that the trends are going. So it's understanding the pain points, it's understanding what they're struggling with. One of the other things as well is that you find an awful lot of companies have a voice, and as a business they communicate in a certain way, which is great when you're a little bit more established, because you'll find that the voice that companies have is generally the voice of their customer. They're using the same terms, they're talking in the same way, they're talking in a similar style, and in some cases in a similar language. That's one of the things that if you can understand, and this goes from the interaction, it goes from the research and learning, from hearing them talk, if you can understand and talk in the same way so that they feel like you're part of their community, whether it's a business community or a cultural community, you understand the way in which they communicate, you use the same language that they do. It always frustrates me with tech startups. They talk like geeks. The marketing communications is all technology, it's feature function, it's bits and bytes, when what their customers are really buying are solutions to problems. They might be selling to a CFO because he makes the decision on signing off the check, so they have to speak to his language and the way that he wants to see something presented, rather than speaking to the guy that's actually going to be using a piece of technology. And it's an error that lots of companies make. Learning and mimicking the behaviours and languages is a very good thing from PR and marketing perspective. So building that into a plan is really important. one of the things that I try and encourage my customers to do is validate all of the things they do as they build a plan. So going out and talking to people that are prospects or customers and asking what they think of it. Are the words right? Is the sentiment behind the words right? Is the overall message right? Because they'll tell you if it isn't. A lot of people enjoy being part of that process because, again, it shows that you're committed to actually helping them, to help them solve problems. Just extensions. One of the biggest things is understanding how they make decisions. And, the analogy there with the CFO, understanding that you're talking to him as much as you're talking to the guy that's going to use the product. You need to understand that you may need to help the person that is your end customer, the person that's using the product or service, but they may have people that validate their decision to choose. And if it's a CEO or if it's a CFO, if it's other colleagues in different departments, they need to be able to communicate why they're buying something. So understanding the decision-making process is part of understanding the various components in the decision-making process, so that you can communicate to them as part of the marketing PR activity. And the influencers as well, which we talked about. Who's validated their audience? Actually been out and you think you know who your audience is? Who's been out and actually checked to make sure that the people that you think are your customers actually want to be your customers? They have the need that you think that you're solving for them. Yeah. How did you do that?
I involved with some events when I go there.
Yeah.
And I pass my business card.
Yeah.
And when those people come and taste my food, and they call me back by my number and discuss with me if they need a service.
Great. It's cool.
I did a yard sales with my used products, and I did a contest draw, and giving some free items. So most people came, which I was able to get their emails and phone numbers, and also some of the where I do the yard sale, there's this elderly people that really loves it.
Yeah.
And so it's like they become real customers now. Come rain or shine, they are there. So I just.
Yeah.
My plan to validate my customers is creating a meetup group.
Okay. Cool. That's great. I mean, I think that's meetup groups are really interesting. They're an interesting way to market to a group because you find people that have a shared interest, and they're not used very much by businesses. I know of a couple that are business driven, but very few, certainly in my field anyway, that are doing that are using it to find those early adopters. I was talking with a company at a very early stage and said, why don't you do an event? Use Meetup or one of the other tools and actually get people to buy in, find something that they're interested in, and then use that as a way to validate that they are the people, and to find out the information about who the other people in the process of buying product or service are. So if you're doing that and validating your audience, you're ahead of, I would say, 95% of most companies. Most companies focus on the product first or the service first, and their understanding of who they think the audience is, and market to that audience without ever having validated that it's the right audience, and then wonder why they find that people aren't buying or not interested, or they're getting a lot of rejections.
For me, when I first started my formulation, what I did is I have a few clients, and I said to them, I have a new product I would like to try on you, and you tell me how you like the difference when you go home. Because some of them, my clients, I basically do their hair. They don't wash their hair at all.
Yeah.
So I'm the one who's doing it, and I have a few clients who actually do wash their hair. Those ones were almost the best one to understand it, because when they go home and they use a different shampoo, they come back and go, oh my God, my hair feels trashy because I used the other one.
Yeah.
What did you use? So I have a few clients who's actually waiting on the product right now, and I did her hair. She went home and she told a couple other ladies, and she goes, I have a couple other ladies who would be interested. And I'm like, okay, but the problem becomes the pressure, because once they get interested and you're not ready, they keep coming back. Is it ready yet? So I find it's really good, and I also got to learn more in detail about the product, because I actually use it on a natural hair and use a flat iron to curl it, and it actually looked like a relaxed hair. So the problem there, it's like women who has natural hair, they want to look elegant just for the weekend, or they want to keep it for 2 weeks. That is what I think triggered to a lot of natural women when they saw it. Because I had a model, I showed them and they look at her hair, oh my God, your hair's beautiful. She goes, did you relax your hair? She goes, no, it's Sandy's product. She goes, what product? I want the product. She goes, does your hair go back natural? She says, yes, it goes right back to its natural state, and it's no chemical. The process is like you almost press your hair and you try to figure, okay, 2 more it's gonna flap. 2 weeks it lasts. So she became a model, and she's telling people and they're interested. So that's how I found it.
Well, it's interesting as well that you bring up the word of mouth and actually the pressure that kind of having more customers and having that word of mouth customer base, because if you imagine if you're going after 300,000, if you went after 300,000 people and you got 10,000 people wanting the product, it will break the business.
Yeah.
People think that the bigger audience you go in tech businesses I work with, everyone wants to be in Mashable and TechCrunch. They're 2 big tech websites, and so why? You might get a lot of traffic, so it increases your bandwidth cost for the month. It's unlikely to get that many inquiries, but if it does, you're going to get thousands.
Yeah.
Are you ready to service?
Yeah, and that's the next thing I was always looking at too, that I know that I wanted to start slow up the slow for the same reason, because if you can't afford to cater to that 1,000, the problem is going to be you're going to flop. And I'd rather do it as the word of mouth, which is being done right now until the product is.
Well, it also reinforces the value. It reinforces the fact that, as I was saying, if it comes from somebody else, it's not you marketing. You're actually, the part of the marketing is understanding the value, communicating with a small number of people, and they will spread it for you. But you get the ability to control it. Whereas if you just do a campaign that goes out trying to find everyone, you lose control. And then if you can't deal with the demand, or for tech companies it's in beta, but you're in early stages and the product's not quite there yet, or the distribution isn't quite there yet, you couldn't cope with thousands and thousands of people. So actually having that, understanding the audience actually helps you grow the business sustainably as well, because it enables you to do it in small groups of people, which then, if you're doing it right and the value is there and customers love what you're doing, they will tell people that are like them, and you can market, you're using them as your marketing tool, which is very low cost, because they paid for the product, or you've given it to them, for a discount at the start, to get them to try it, but then they market for you to people that are like them, that have a demand, that understand the value.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah, because that's what I'm
Oui.
finding.
Oui.
See, we didn't went far. We stayed right in the room.
Isn't that
we
cute?
won't be late.
All right. Thank you.
So it's the perfect place to have broken, actually. So got an activity now focused on audience, and it'll take 10 minutes, 5 minutes to get it started, but it's something that you can continue, over the next few days, and keep it. You sit these things in a notebook and just keep the notebook around, and you'll find that when you've got a spare 5 minutes, you can look at it and go back and change it and tweak it. There's a newspaper in the UK called The Guardian. I don't know whether you've heard of it.
I
But
think there's a Guardian in probably almost every country.
yeah,
Everyone has a Guardian.
Yeah.
this is particularly renowned for one thing. It was known for knowing its audience in unbelievable detail. and the stories that it wrote were writing for these people. And I always say to people I work with that an audience isn't IT directors, it isn't CEOs, it isn't people within a certain community or that speak a certain language. It's understanding who your ideal customer is in an awful lot more detail. And The Guardian could tell you, I forget everything, but there was a story written about it in a marketing magazine years and years ago when I was starting my career. They could tell you the likely names, first names of people that read their paper, could tell them where they lived, how much their houses were, how long, if it was a couple, they'd been together, whether they were a couple or single, how many kids they had, whether they owned dogs or cats, what car they drove, what model car they drove. They could likely tell you what colour it was. They could tell you what the salary bracket was for, both members of the couple or for the individuals. They could tell you which supermarket they went to, which hotel chain, which airlines they used to fly on, where they went on holiday for destinations. So they had this huge amount of detail. So when they were writing a story, and I knew somebody over the last few years that worked for the paper, and one of the tests for writing the story to find out whether it was interesting or not, and whether it would be something that would get people going to read it, was would this person read it? What would they think when they read it? Was the angle right? Had they got the right balance? Had they brought in the right elements to it? And it was astonishing. So they knew all of this information, which enabled them to make decisions about the content, which essentially is their product, so that there was no guesswork. More often than not, it was right. And the paper had this reputation for developing stories that appealed to this very small segment, but it was a small segment of 400, 500,000 people every day. So what I wanted to get you to do was to write down who your ideal target customer is in as much detail as you can, thinking about the age demographic, the cultural background, the language, the location, what sort of income bracket they're in, what other products they might use, because that will all give you information to understand the customer better. It'll also enable you to do research better as well, because you can look at more established brands and how they're communicating to this person. They say, I forget, there was an advert yesterday that Nokia did after Apple announced its coloured phones. And it simply said, imitation is the best form of flattery, because Nokia have had coloured phones for a year, 18 months. But it's understanding who you're communicating with, understanding how other brands that are marketing to that same group of people market, that will enable you then to borrow some tips and tricks and learn some stuff from what they're doing. So take 5 or 10 minutes and just kind of build that customer profile. If you could have one customer, and I mean one customer as in a type of customer rather than one single customer, but what you want to be doing is essentially replicating that ideal customer over and over and over again. And if you have questions or you need help while you're doing it, just let me know.
What's that?
What did you make to the Apple announcement?
I think they're becoming desperate. I think they're at a stage. I'm an Apple fan, by the way, and but I think they're at a stage where they're starting to lose the edge that they've had, and the 4S and the 5S and C and all that. It's just a cockamamie because they really are they're struggling with market share, and it's just going to be more and more evident as time goes
But
by.
there's a thing that I always go back to, I forget where it was reported now, but we did an interview with Steve Jobs this is going back 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
where they said your market share is only 5% or 3%, whatever. You know, and he said, yeah, but I don't want the mass market. He said, you know, we're 3% of the overall market. We have 90% of the market for laptops over $1,000. That's
True.
where I want to
True.
play.
But the problem that I think that they're having is to give them that extra. I mean, what did they prove in the S model? Got the fingerprint, a camera.
So
They haven't made that much of a leap and bound.
it's been 2 years really since
Okay,
they've
exactly.
changed anything.
Anything that is worthwhile. You've got the colored phones. Okay, they're trying to split the market.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
I just don't know.
I said I think they need a $1,000 fine. They need to go after that premium market again.
Well,
It has to be desirable.
the 5S side that starts at what, $600, $700. It's not cheap.
No, but they needed something which was higher or was premium.
I just thought that they would by now have redefined the TV as
Yeah.
we speak, because they're competing in a market that's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. They blew the market away when they came up with their iPad, iPhone,
Yeah.
all of that. But now it's not innovative.
Well, the other thing is they've also got all of the screens, which is the thing. You know, they've got all the different size screens to go with the TV. They've got all of the second screens. So why not?
I don't know. Anyways,
Maybe
I gotta
because
go
they,
on my copy.
maybe because they don't. They don't know how to do it.
Let's get in touch. Stay in touch,
We'll do.
and we'll hook up off this. Okay.
Look forward to it.
Stay out of trouble, ladies and gentlemen.
Now,
He's a
really,
troublemaker, eh?
What?
stay out of trouble. That's not in my
Vocabulary.
vocabulary. You know
She has
better.
issues.
Ah.
How are we getting on?
Find their activities and their location and
Well, anything that you can kind of write down about them. So it could be language, it could be cultural background, it could be where they shop currently, which products they use. It could be what car they drive. It could be what magazines they read. But there's also age. Are they male, female? Are you selling to couples? It's just if you have an ideal customer walk through your door, as much of that ideal customer as you can come up with. The next part is, you've defined the audience. The next part is the right message. You've got to say the right things. We talked about understanding how they think, how they talk, how they communicate, but you've actually got to be able to communicate the value. You've actually got to be able to effectively convince them that you have something that is going to add value to their personal or their business life. We talked a little bit a minute ago about kind of ethics and morals and integrity, and I think one of the things that certainly with small businesses is to look at your core values. What are the values that you hold as an entrepreneur that you're projecting into the business? Because your value structure is going to be shown very strongly in the way in which you operate as a business, and that's what people are going to be buying into as a small business. And as you grow, you develop a culture based on the people that you bring into the business. But as an entrepreneur, it's very much about the core values that your personal core values. One of the exercises that I run very often with entrepreneurs is to say, okay, if people look at you and by connection the business, what do you want to say about you? Not about the product or the service, but about you, about dealing with you as a business person, as a business relationship. And then how can you support it? How can you demonstrate? What do you do that kind of is the behaviour that demonstrates this value? So that would be something that if you haven't already done it, I would recommend that you do and think, what are the values that I want to project? Is it true? Somebody's mentioned trustworthy, integrity, honesty, fairness, about understanding that you're providing a service for people on low or middle incomes, and that they have a requirement for certain things. And it all ties into defining the audience. You understand who your audience is. You understand the values that matter to them. You were saying about. I'm not very good with names, so I apologise if I get people's names wrong. But you were saying about the Iranian culture, the Persian culture, that marketing is not seen as being of value because if the product or service stands on itself. So understanding that as part of the way in which you market without marketing is important, because if you can't sell to people if the value set isn't there. It's same business is about people. You have values, and you have to you can't put the values aside while you run your business and then go home at night and you kind of readdress those values. So it's a big part of it. So it's a good exercise to do, because you'll also find out some of the things that will attract people into the business. So the value proposition, we talked a little bit about this, and it's the fact that you focus on the value, not the feature and function, the value to your audience, not the value that you think you deliver. And they may be the same, but if you understand the value that your customer gets from it, that's really what the core of the value proposition is. So all of these templates I'll make available via J, so you can log into a folder and download whichever ones you want and play around with them and everything else, as well as the presentation. The whole presentation will be available afterwards as well. This is what I use as the basis for doing value proposition work. It's very small, so I'll read it just so you know what the sections are. First one is what we do. Second one is why it matters and why it matters to the audience. The third piece is how we're different. And then the bottom portion here is the proof. So it's all of the things that if somebody says, okay, you say that your hair care product is better than anything else on the market. Why? Okay, well, if you use it, it creates the impression that the hair is natural. It doesn't damage it because there are no chemicals. You can prove that there are no chemicals in there by looking at the way in which the product's created. There's all of those things that you can build into that, but when you're talking to somebody, it might be as part of the elevator pitch, you'll say, this is my business and this is why we're different, this is the value. Okay, but prove it. How can you demonstrate that what you say is true? And then you've got, I go with 3 pieces. So you have one statement that backs up the proof, or the 3 pillars, and then you have 3 bits of supporting information for each one of the things that defines or backs up the value that you deliver to your customer. It's something as well that as you start to get into doing media interviews, it's very useful, because what I always say to customers is that when you speak to journalists, you could talk about anything, but actually if you have a very clear idea of 3 things you want to communicate, 3 things that if you say, if nothing else gets understood, that will help you to grow your business, focus on those, because it gives you that template. Of course, in here you've got 1, 2, 3, and then you've got the supporting evidence. So if somebody says, if you say to a journalist, well, this is why we're different, and here's an example. Okay, well, how can you substantiate it? You've already got it ready to go. You don't have to think about it. You haven't got to find it on another document or write it down. You've got it all there. So what you can normally do, excuse me, is create a value proposition for the business as a whole. But then if you have different products and different services, you can create a value proposition document for each one of those products based on who the audience is, based on how it fits with other products or services, how it fits with the overall value proposition of the business. And every time that you launch a new product, you can go through the same process or new service. I think of services as products. They're essentially a product that you're making money from, you're selling for money. But you build that, and it then helps you, one, to understand whether it's right and to validate it. So when you take it out to potential customers, you can show them this and say, does this match up? Is the evidence that I have to support this part of why we're different and why we're better than the competition, does it make sense? And oftentimes they'll come back and say, well, it does, but I'd really like to see something about that. If you can show me that and show me the evidence to support that, then that's what's going to convince me that what you're saying is true. And you can use it as the tool for refining the value proposition, but also then as you get down into doing marketing and PR messages, developing what the message needs to be for each particular customer. That's Lindy.
Okay, so where would we use this, like in terms of marketing to the customer, supporting evidence with maybe landing pages? Where would you?
Oh, yeah, it's funny. I did.
Where would you support this? Where would you bring this towards the customer?
It will be everything you do.
Uh-huh.
It's funny. I'm working with a customer right now who fundamentally rethought the business.
Mm-hmm.
I went down and we did value proposition document on the business.
Mm-hmm.
We did a value proposition for each of the different elements of the service that they offer. And he's just redoing his website. It's a seasonal business, so they now have an off-season where they're getting ready to start to promote next year's season. And went through, and I'm not sure, he didn't actually say anything to me, but I'm not sure he understood why I'd done it this way. I got the wireframe for his new website through the end of last week. He said, now I understand how this works. Because he said,
I just understood it now that you just said it.
the homepage,
Just got it.
you've got the top here,
Now, yeah.
and the text that goes underneath it all fits into the web template. And so for each of the, so he's got the thing that's on the homepage, which is the business one, which then we've made sure it aligns with the product one. So it's very similar, it's just tweaked, and he's got different audiences. They actually work, it's a summer camp. They've got audiences, obviously they've got guidance counsellors in schools, they've got parents, they've got teenagers, and he's got a market that through the conversation he never realised he had, which was sports coaches, because they offer a camp which helps prepare kids with leadership skills, and it's about the components of being a leader rather than saying here's a set of leadership skills. It's developing each child individually. But he suddenly realised that if you're a sports coach, you might have a child who's amazingly talented as a football player, maybe a really good quarterback technically, but doesn't have the communication skills to be able to make it work on the field. So, as a sports coach, you would welcome something that actually helps, your, up and coming, sports team to get college scholarships and stuff like that, to have these skills and go on this program. So we've developed a whole new part of his business that he never really knew was a segment, but he's now got a value proposition that speaks only to sports athletic coaches and directors. So when they come on the site, it's not all about just being a regular summer camp. It's actually a section which is dedicated for sports coaches, and says why they should send their athletes to his program rather than any one of the other ones that's on, that's available online. And then the value proposition is the basis for your messages. And we've talked about understanding different customers, so you develop custom messages for each audience group. You will find that there's a lot of similarity in them, but it's just as there are small differences in your customer groups, there will be small differences in the messages that you communicate, depending on age, depending on income, depending on location, depending on culture, on language, depending on the product sometimes.
I think it's great how you can turn one business and add other things to facilitate other people. Like he's doing coaching, but now he's handling other sport, and that's just grown his market.
Well, the thing was that knowing your audience, as I was saying to Jay earlier on, I'm working with another business where they know who their audience is by name.
Yes.
You know, they can go on, they know the demographic of people. They can go on various websites and they can find the names of these people because they're targeting very particular postal areas, postal codes, because they're targeting businesses in there. They know who they are. They can phone them up, and rather than sending them a mail piece, they can phone them up and say, you know, how can we help? What do you know? And it's building that relationship. Sorry.
Yes, my question is to put my product in the website. For me, I have a strategy to call my customer at the event, whatever I stand. I put it on the Creole.
Yeah.
So I put the original product. I put the name in Creole.
Yeah.
And that get them attract their attention to my business.
Yeah.
For example, I have a product in Accra.
Yeah.
You don't know what is Accra. I have to tell you what is Accra.
Yeah.
So when they come, they ask me what is Accra. I explain them what is on it, and like I say, I give them this. So should I put that name on my website or put it in English for them to know exactly?
Well,
Because they're not going to see it.
you could do it for both. I mean, one of the things that on websites is really interesting. You find that most pages don't have any kind of segmentation. I'm just changing mine because mine doesn't, and I need to have the ability to people come on the site and say, "Who are you?" Excuse me. Are you an entrepreneur in a startup? Are you a marketing person in a slightly larger business, or are you a VC funding company? Because then there are different messages that work with each of those audiences. So I think that if you've got multiple audiences, multiple languages, having the ability to read a site in 2 languages, because it sounds like a lot of your customers are are segmented by language, and you don't want to have it where one part of it is disadvantaged because they can't understand it or they don't know what it is. If you've got an audience that understands it in one language, use the language. It's one of the things that very few companies do, and I would love to see it happen more. Companies don't market in multiple languages. They market in the predominant language, and companies should market in multiple languages. If their customers speak multiple languages, then as a business you need to accommodate both languages as first languages.
How do you feel about, because now that you've said this, I'm actually thinking affiliating with other businesses within your same group, because I'm thinking that there are other services that provide dating or whatever who don't teach the educational point. I can actually target them as well to come and use our service. What do you think of that?
I think that's great. Technology is white labeling. It's providing a product that you offer nobody else does. 2 other companies don't offer it. I think that's great. I think if you can make money out of selling that to them, then why not?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that
Working with a competitor.
they're never going to. Well, and the thing, some companies won't ever have the knowledge or the ability or the skills to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it adds value to their business without being directly conflicted.
Right.
Other businesses won't want the hassle of doing that. They have a regular business that they're happy doing that does volume or it's transactional. They're not interested in adding that, but if they can offer it without having to invest more money or gain more skills, and it helps them to help their customers, then why not? So I think it's definitely worth looking at. Having a conversation with them and seeing how they would feel about it. Some companies will want to work with you, some won't because you're a competitor. And it's I've got a customer right now who said exactly that question about working with competition. in terms of marketing, what if we pull all of our marketing budget? We're all small businesses. We can do more with the kind of the cumulative budget than we can all do individually. And we've all got something which is unique about our business. So why not market as a collection of companies on a website where people make the decision? Are they, because they have a particular need, are they, clicking on that website or this website? But the landing page is for all of them, and it brings everyone in. And so now they're experimenting with that but it all comes down to being able to communicate the value proposition. Otherwise, companies that can't communicate clearly why you should click their site rather than one of the competitors is always going to lose out. So we're working with the marketing teams of each of the businesses now to make sure that they all feel like they've differentiated their business clearly enough so that if you get the whole addressable market coming to the site, you get that separation between the individual companies. So everyone gets their share of the traffic from their share of the budget which they put into the pot.
You're essentially doing something the marketing people, normally marketers will try to get you to use their service to market yourself, but you're actually doing it yourself with a group of different businesses at a more cost-effective price.
Yes. So it's figuring out what works best, and if you can sell product to competitors because it adds value, then great. If it doesn't, make sense, they'll tell you it doesn't make sense.
Yes, exactly.
But while there are opportunities, as long as it works for you, then by all means, having clear messages, clear value proposition is one of the ways that you can make it work, because you naturally the people that have that are in your ideal target customer group will automatically gravitate towards you because you offer something that none of your competitors do. Or it might be that it's split by culture, it might be that it's split by age group, it's by language, or by the value set. Your value set may appeal to one particular audience, where the value set of one of your competitors may appeal to a completely different set of people. So it's looking for those opportunities, but being clear on the value proposition, the messages will help you to do that more easily, and also get your competitors to buy in, because they'll see that you have a very clear idea of who your customer is, and unless it's a complete map, then there's room enough for both inside there. So, sorry, I'm Lyndon.
Hamid, I'm sorry.
Hamid, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
No problem. We're just going through kind of value proposition and messaging now. So, about how you communicate the value. We covered audience to start with, about segmenting the audience,
Okay.
and then looking at once you've kind of identified the audience, how you develop messages and value propositions that communicate specifically to those people. I was just saying as well that all of the templates and documents and presentation will be available afterwards, so you'll be able to get access to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So that's it helps with websites and stuff. The other thing is that when you're developing everything from mailers to email, email blast, email mail outs, they call them blasts. I haven't come up with a word yet that isn't kind of a blast. It's kind of very targeted email. It's targeted email marketing, I guess is the best way to describe it. But having this for the product, for the audience, every time you create something from a marketing or PR perspective, will help you to, one, maintain the clarity, to get the most out of it, to make it as effective as possible. The other thing is that it's about repetition. It's about repeating as much as when we talked about the elevator pitches, they're going to change. You'll find that by having these things and the value set as well, you'll be repeating, the core will remain the same. It will just, bits and pieces change your context, the amount of time that you have to talk to people, their background, so depending on how much they already know about your business or the industry that you work in. So it's corporate. This is a product one that's slightly different. There's a hybrid of the two as well, which I'll load up. But this one's got the target audience. This is probably actually one for the marketing side of it is more appropriate. It's got target audience, so you've got that at the top of everything you do when you're developing the campaigns or the literature or the content. The desired outcome as well, which is important. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to click a link on your site? Do you want them to pick up the phone? Do you want them to send you an email? Do you want them to read a document? Do you want to go off and read something else that somebody else has written about you? So understanding what the outcome is. It's the value proposition there, so it's what it solves and why that's important, and then the proof points for each of it. But just keeping that kind of on the desk when you're developing the marketing just helps to keep you on track, and then when you've developed something you can go back and you can look at it and say, okay, well, does this really work for an audience of a certain age or a certain demographic or a certain language? So you can actually retrofit it and validate the fact that you've kept to the plan, the target audience that you're starting with. So this is what we talked about a little bit with the elevator pitch, the 10, 25, 50 and 100 words. What I do with customers is when we've been through and we've done the value proposition and the messages, we'll try and do is just as the top level stuff, is work them up into these lengths in 10 words, 25 words, 50 words and 100 words, so that for different pieces of collateral, for different platforms, you have ready-made explanations of your business or of a product, so that you can explain it very quickly. For social media, it's very short, very succinct. Twitter, you've got 140 characters. For Facebook, you've got a bit more. LinkedIn, you can do a little bit more. If you're developing a web page, you've probably got 100 words to play around with. But you'll have those different sets that you can use, and you can use as part of the marketing. So when you're developing messages for a specific product, for a specific audience, maybe it's a new product you're launching, or you're just doing a time-sensitive campaign, you can go back and look at these, and it gives you a base to start from, depending on what it is you're doing, depending on the delivery mechanism, depending on the platform you're using, depending on the level of awareness that they already have about your business or about the product. But it's always good to have those sets up. I was actually doing something for me last night. Say I have the stuff always on the desk, and I wrote something I'm redoing the website, and I wrote the kind of very high level 10 word overview, and I wrote it without counting the words, and I went back, it was 11 words. So you get into the mode of thinking in these chunks. 10 words will fit on a page at the bottom of a website. Clearly, it's normally one line, so there's no break over the page, so you don't get 2 lines of text where you've got one full line and one word, which is kind of orphan or widow, depending on with the context of it. But if you get in the mindset of thinking 10, 25, 50 and 100 words for describing your business and your products, you will find that it becomes easier to quickly come up with something that fits in those templates. My wife finds it funny. For years and years working in radio, my life was 15-minute segments. You had top of the hour where you read the bulletin, which was 2 or 3 minutes. Sometimes it was 5 minutes. Then you come out of the studio, you have 10 minutes to basically clean out all of the stories that needed refreshing, or you were going to drop because something else had come in, or you'd run them so many times that they needed to be kind of moved out of the programme. But 15 minutes past the hour, a news editor would say, what are your stories? What are you going with for the next hour? You then have 15 minutes, or the remainder of the 15 minutes, to actually research them, to find out if you've got enough information to refresh a story. If a new story had come, you've got enough information to be able to write it and know that it was relevant to your audience. From 1:30 till 1:45, you were writing the story. So you had 15 minutes to write up all the information that you had, to turn it into stuff that you could then use in the bulletin. And then between 45 past and top of the hour, you were going through, proofing it, reading it, making sure that you knew it. So if somebody removed a piece of paper, or you lost it, or you dropped it, you could read to the end of the paragraph to be able to get the story out and play the audio that you had. And so for 6 or 7 or 8 years, my life, 10 hours a day, often longer, was built into those 15-minute segments. My wife now says to me, what's the time? Randomly. and I can tell her within a couple of minutes what the time is without having a watch, looking at a cell phone. So I know what time I last looked at the clock, and I can instinctively tell you how long it's been since the last time we looked at the clock. And it's very rare that I'm wrong. If I've had a beer, it's sometimes a little bit more fuzzy. But it's just training yourself to think that way. So if you do this, it becomes easy for you to know, which set of time you have. I mean, if you work at three words a second, you've got 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 25 seconds, and then kind of 30 or 40 seconds. So then, really, it's validating the messages. It's making sure that you check in with your audience. Instead of showing them the value proposition documents, making sure that what you think is important to them, the things that are going to trigger them to take action, are actually the things that will. You've got the evidence and proof points there that are actually going to have the desired outcome that you expect. It's one of the things that you learn. How many of you know about the lean startup kind of model? No. I'll post something to it. It's a book that started it all, but it's essentially about validating assumptions, which is how a lot of the incubators and accelerators now get their entrepreneurs to run businesses. It's about essentially so that you find out if something doesn't work very quickly, rather than spending a lot of time working on something only then to find at the end that it doesn't work. And the way that we work with PR and marketing is to do the same thing. It's to validate everything that you do, so validate the audience, it's validating the value proposition, the messaging, to make sure that they have the right impact with the audience. That if you want to communicate certain things, that the way you develop the 50 or the 100-word message communicates the value that you want to communicate for it. If you've got 10 words, that you've managed to kind of shrink it into something effective into that 10-word option, and that they get the same essence that you're intending them to communicate. I was always remember something I was told right back at the start of my PR career is that with email, that you can always control the tone and the message in which you're intending to deliver. You can never control how it's perceived by the person reading it at the other end. And this is part of the process, making sure that when you say something, when you communicate something, that it's actually being received in the way that you intended it to be delivered, and that it has that right impact.
For big companies, there is some methodology for copy testing and message testing.
Yes.
Yeah, but for maybe small businesses, I don't know. Is there any way to do that?
To copy what they're doing. Well, a lot of it, we talked earlier on about learning, so I think if you look at what the bigger companies are doing, if you have the same target audience, understand what they're doing and trying to mimic it. Saying there's a Nokia ad yesterday after Apple announced the colour phone saying imitation is the best form of flattery. So if you can learn things from the bigger companies that you can apply, absolutely. Borrow, as long as you're not infringing trademarks and patents and registered stuff like that. If you can borrow ideas, you can borrow the way in which they communicate. I'm a big fan of the way that Apple communicated under Steve Jobs. I'm less of a fan of the way they're doing it now. But a lot of the stuff that I try and do in terms of simplicity is a lot of it is borrowed from the way Apple communicates, because it's very short, very to the point. There's a great book actually if you want to understand the process that Apple went through to get things communicated so simply and so clearly. It's called Insanely Simple. I'll post up some details of it as well in the folder. But it's by the head of the creative team for the ad agency that worked with Steve Jobs through the time that he was at Next and then at Apple, and kind of his second chapter where the company became incredibly successful, about the process that they went through. I get asked a lot by entrepreneurs, well, how do I communicate like Apple? It's like you have to have that at the heart of your business. You can't mimic it because it doesn't work. It has to be inherent, but you can use some of the same processes and to kind of distill things down into very simple, very clear Everyone thinks that the iPod, the first iPod, one of the messages was 10,000 songs in your pocket or 1,000 songs in your pocket. People think it's 5 words, 6 words, that it was just something somebody wrote down. It took 9 months. It took 9 months of going backwards and forwards, thinking, okay, what do we want to say? If there's one phrase that's memorable that we want people to keep repeating, that illustrates the value of our device over the other music players that are out there. It's 5 words, but it took 9 months to go backwards and forwards with ideas and don't like that, do like this, what if we change that, if we change this word, if we change the position in the sentence of a word, does it change the meaning? So that book is great because it kind of explains about the simplicity process, about how you go through and define and refine and improve, from 100 words down to 10 words and still keep the same meaning, the same impact. So I think we're going to break for lunch in a second, but something we can do while over lunch maybe is just looking at the value propositions for businesses using the template. And I'll put the template back up so you can kind of keep it up there. Trying to write a value proposition for your business, just so that you've got some practice in doing it. It won't be same as the elevator pitch. It won't be perfect. It will be something that will incrementally, you'll go back to and you'll refine and develop. And it should do. And there's an argument that it shouldn't stay the same. You look at businesses that have been around 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. There are very few businesses that have kept the same value proposition, the same message for the whole length of time, because as much as the company may have stayed the same, the market has changed around them. Yeah, so it should be evolving. So it's just getting you thinking about a starting point and getting you to fill out an initial value proposition for the business, which you can then use to develop and evolve and work on. I was one of the ones that has, it's amazing because it doesn't feel like it's been around for that long, was Nike's Just Do It. It celebrated 25 years a couple of weeks ago. And if you understand where it came from, I had no idea where they got the idea from. And I forget the actual story, but I remember. Yeah, I remember now having thought about it. Just do it. Everyone associates it now with performance and seizing the moment and living in the moment. Apparently, it was actually brought to the table by one of the ad creatives that was developing the kind of brand positioning for Nike, from the words of somebody about to be executed. Who was strapped on the gurney and said, okay, let's just do it. And they evolved that. Of course, if people knew that, it may not necessarily have been quite so successful. But now it's established, it's an interesting afternote of the fact that that's where it came from. But you think, taking about living in the moment, originally came from somebody who was about to get a lethal injection.
Yes.
And just, so if we're going to do it, let's just do it. So, yes.
Well, what you say is that when the person been in business for a long time, is it when the person actually started the business and to now?
The length of time, yeah. It's normally from the point that you know you have a viable business, because you'll understand as you start a business, there's a lot of time that it's one of my favourite quotes. My wife is sick and tired of hearing of it. Starting a business is like jumping out of a plane and building a parachute on the way down, and that's the experience. So I think when you get to talking about 5 years, 10 years, it's when you realise that the parachute is kind of there, and that you're actually going to have a soft landing, or you're gonna float a bit. But I keep going back to that because every day I think, okay, when something doesn't quite go right, or it doesn't move as quickly as I thought it would, or whatever, I think, okay, I've effectively jumped out of a plane and I'm trying to build the parachute, and I'm pulling bits of the guide on how to build it from here and bits from there, and that bit doesn't quite work because I've got this bit and it doesn't fit with that, so I need to find another bit. And so it's you evolve it as it goes through and as you need to. You will find the natural parts in the life of the business where the message needs to change. And sometimes it's not driven by your business changing, it's driven by your customers changing or the market changing. But you should find those natural bits. But it's normally the years marker from the point where you pulled the cord and the parachute's opened. Because otherwise you're still in build phase up until that point.
But I still don't hold the parachute yet.
Well, that's fine.
That takes time. You're just a baby right
I
now.
know.
You're just a baby right now. None of us are. I'm sure he's still waiting to pull that parachute, right?
Yeah.
My business have a story, right?
Yeah.
Because I travel different countries, like 12 countries already. Everywhere I go, I put my flag.
Yeah.
But there's some reason my business is disturbing.
Yeah.
So I have to go somewhere else to put my flag again. So I never put my parachute yet.
Well,
You gotta stop. Or maybe, well, you
but then there's that. What you're doing is you're establishing the story. You're putting the things in place that will enable you to be able to pull the cord. It's in base jumping. It's crazy sport. You know, jump off a building with a parachute. Although the funny thing is, I would rather do a base jump than jumping off a building than I would jump out of a plane. For the ridiculous reason that with base jumping you're closer to the ground.
Yeah.
Go figure. It sounds stupid because the ground's going to come up an awful lot quicker from a building than it will do from a plane. But I found out when I was a kid that every time base jumpers jump, whether they still do it or not, I don't know, they say the same thing. So every time they jump, they say "see you," and they
say
scream
what, see you?
it "see you"
Uh-huh.
as they jump, and they let go of the parachute in their hand. Effectively, what you're doing at this stage in the business is you're figuring out what the thing is you shout as you jump until you get to the point where you pull the cord. And then all of a sudden you have other things. Yeah. But it's that's really in the early stages. It's figuring out what you need to say that's going to get you to that point where the parachute is built and you know that it's going to support you. Because you need to have those early customers. It's the early adopters, the early customers, the people that validate the fact that your business is legitimate, that you have something that people are going to pay you money for. And it's one of the things in the lean. I recommend you read the Lean Startup book because it will explain to you about the validation process and about the natural rhythm of a business. And if you do it right under the Lean model, you validate out the things that aren't going to work. But you need messages for attracting those first customers, for the people that you might give the product away to get them to try it. Because once they've tried it, they're willing to pay for it because they don't want to live without it. Or they see the value and it changes their life in a way that gives them opportunities they wouldn't already have had. So at this stage, I guess it's that thing. It's when you kind of take the step off and you just kind of jump. What do you shout? What do you say to the world that kind of gets them to take notice? I had an interesting conversation with a friend in New York a few months ago. I don't know how we got to talking about it, but she said, if you knew that you were going to die in a plane crash, what would you say? What would be the thing that would run through your head? And I kind of, very flippantly said, so be it. If it's going to happen, there's nothing I can do about it. It's, But then I got a really bumpy flight back. And I suddenly thought maybe I should have thought about it in a little bit more detail because I might actually have to use it. But it's one of those things where it will change and you learn from the experiences. And, by talking to somebody and saying something, whether it's a networking event or on the phone, you'll learn that part of the story has to change. And it's part of having the framework there where you can go back and you can look and say, okay, what has changed? Why do I feel I need to change part of the value proposition or the message? And which bits of it do I need to keep? And is there more evidence now to support one thing that actually this is a stronger portion of it that I need to build out and I can get rid of this piece that now doesn't have any relevance at all? But don't be afraid of playing around with it. You've got to have something in order to get to the point where the business will be validated and you pull the cord. It might be that you pull the cord and nothing happens. in which case then you've got to go back, but at least then you've got a framework where you think, okay, we'll come on to the measurement this afternoon, but it's by doing it in this structured way that you can actually go back and say, okay, I pulled the cord and what I expected to happen didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Was it that actually the audience has changed, or the audience isn't quite what I thought it was? Is it that the message isn't quite right? It's kind of, they're understanding it, but they're not taking action as a result of it. Two things that we'll come on to this afternoon is looking at timing. Timing is critical, and it's something that you have very little control over. You can control it, but there are things that will happen around that. You'll need revenue and income. There'll be things that you'll need to do to take advantage of a gap that's left by competition. So timing's kind of key, and we'll talk about how you can kind of take steps to build that in. And then the fourth thing is the platform or the channel that you deliver the message to the audience at the right time via. Is it social media? Is it face-to-face? Is it via the web? And how do you do that? And what kind of what ways have you got options to do that? What combinations is it? Because often it's not one or another. It's a combination of things that you use different platforms, and they'll together create the stuff that you need. So it's one of the big questions that all marketeers would love to answer, and very few actually do, is when is the right time? When is the right time to have a conversation with a prospect or an influencer or a journalist? When's the best time to launch a new product? Because you've got competitors launching products, you've got things going on in the world that you have no control over that might happen, that may mean that your launch isn't as effective as it could be. And while there are no guarantees, you can, understanding the audience, understanding what's going on in the market around you and competitors, you can find good times. You can find the best time. There's a belief, certainly amongst the tech companies that I work with, that the minute they finish a product and it's ready for release, so they've ironed out as many bugs as they can find, they know it's not going to crash, that's the best time to launch the product because it's ready. And it isn't necessarily the best case because the market isn't ready for it. And it might be that it's not a bad time, but it may not be the best time. So one of the things is about finding the best time. These days as well, there's a thing that the best time to have those conversations, to launch products, is all the time. You've got social media, right? So the minute you're ready to say something, the world's ready to listen. You've got this vehicle, and you can do it every hour, on the hour, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and just hope you might capture somebody's attention. Because if you're going after 10,000 or 30,000 or 300,000 people, you're going to find somebody who's listening. And if you do it often enough, then you might find the 7.5 people you're looking for. In reality, the best time to do anything is when your audience is listening. It's when they're ready, when they're looking for something that you have to offer. You can do a whole load of research, understanding the industry, understanding your customers. There are key times around the year in every industry and every product segment that are better than others. You imagine trying to sell Christmas cards on January 27th. It wouldn't work because the opportunity for that year is gone. You imagine trying to find snow boots in July. You can probably find somebody that has them, but they're probably not the ones for the year coming, and you can get a very big selection of it because the audience isn't looking for snow boots in July. So it's finding those times when your audience is in that position where they're ready, they understand they have a need, and they're ready to do something about it. Sometimes it will be contextual. It will be that a regulation has changed. I work with some technology companies where there was a huge opportunity came around a couple of years ago where a regulation had changed, and they had a piece of software that had been designed with this in mind, on the basis that if the law ever got changed and the regulation ever got changed, they would have an opportunity. But they've been waiting 2 years for it. It wasn't something that when they launched the product they focused on because nobody was listening, nobody was interested. Nobody had a need to be. But once they changed the regulation, all of a sudden, they had a financial interest and a regulatory interest to be able to use this functionality. So kind of all of a sudden, customers that had bought the software for something else had, the reason to give the company more money to access this functionality that had been built in. Companies that were looking to swap out systems were looking for a system that had this specific thing built in. We're in the point where they were having to do it. So if they were going to do it, they might as well buy a platform that had it built in rather than buying bits of software that they had to build together. So it's about understanding where they are and understanding that you have these opportunities. They may not necessarily be immediate, but that if you understand the value of the product, you understand the value at one point in time is different to another. So it's finding those right times. Part of it is understanding the audience, but you can look at industry events, you can look at things that are going on in the world. You can look at opportunities where there's focus on certain things. If it's a food-based business, there'll be times in the year where there are lots of festivals and there's a focus on food. The CNE is a prime example. If you're looking to demo a new food, maybe not the cronut, but if you're looking to try a new piece of food, there's an expectation there that if you're exhibiting at a CNE, that's where people go to try new things. If you've got a technology business, then you'll understand there are trade shows certain times of the year. But one of the big things is, and I've been working with a customer recently where they've got a show over the weekend into next week, and they want to do stuff, or they wanted to do stuff when they got to the show, when everybody else is announcing stuff. Why do you want to announce something when everybody else is announcing something? Because the chances of the people that you want to listen to it, hear it, do something about it, are too busy listening to everybody else's stuff. They're listening to, they're also focused on telling people what they want to tell people to get them to buy whatever it is they're selling. And so we ran a program where we basically said, let's do it a month before. They said, but nobody does it a month before. You're not competing against something, are you? Everybody that goes to that show is getting ready for it a month, 2 months ahead. So they're expecting stuff to come, but everybody does it the week before the show. Of course, then you're just shouting in a room of people shouting. So you do it ahead of time. We've done some interviews and got it all set up ahead of the show. So we've had all the coverage now, so people going to the show now know what they're showing. And they're planning to go and see them, and the journalists are interested because they know it's there, and their prospects know that they have something new that is of interest to them. They've set up meetings, rather than trying to make a big song and dance about it at the show, which is where most people launch products. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But you'd be surprised how many people fall into that. The right time is often when you've got that window of opportunity, but when other people aren't doing it, if you've got lots of competition in a noisy space. So do the research, find out when those opportunities are, whether it's seasonal, whether it's event-based, if you've got something that is reliant on laws changing or regulations changing, or that there's a change in mind shift of the customer. Understand when they are, because then you'll understand when you feed the stuff into them to capture their attention. If you want them to, which is what my customer wants people to do, is to go to the booth and buy what they have on show. Had they have done it at the show, people would come by to have a look because it's interesting and they've just announced it, but nobody actually makes a decision having seen it once. They've already had the chance to be exposed to it, they've had the chance to talk to the sales guys before it. All they're doing when they come to the booth now at the show is validating that it does what they've been told it will do. All of the other boxes that they need to have checked off in order to make a purchase have already been done before they ever get to the show. So it's one of those things that the right time and being a little bit clever about it and doing the research will pay dividends. You'll find out that your customers are much more receptive. So it's key events. Timing activity. One of the things that I wanted to look at for each of the businesses now is look and see where in your business plan for the next 3 or 6 months you see there are opportunities. So make a list of 3 or 4 things that will impact your audience, so that they're in that right frame of mind. You have an opportunity where they're either actively looking or there's contextual stuff changing around them that will give you that opportunity, because the biggest temptation is to go out here today and think I've got all the ideas, and then just start talking about your business to everyone. And actually, until you've got the proposition, the message is done, it's probably not going to do you any good. It's just going to create more work for you to go out and start talking to those people, when actually you could spend it focused on getting the things in place that you need. So just do this very quickly, 5 or 10 minutes. Just have a think about the time, about the opportunities that you have in the next 3 months or so, where you'll have an opportunity to kind of have that conversation where your customer's actively listening, actively ready. And then we'll share a few. This will come up again in the next part, but there was a great sign that was above the microphone when I was working in radio, which my then editor said was all about timing. And it said, engage brain, open mouth, not the other way around. Because if you do the other one before you've done the first bit, there's no telling what will come out. So what sort of times, what sort of things will change your business? Give you that opportunity.
Wait for timing.
Yeah.
Well, I know I was doing some research on mine, and they said the beginning of the year is really a good time because people are looking to make changes and want to do something new in their life, either develop or so like making changes. People want to.
Would people look for people before Christmas to find somebody to spend
Yes, they
Christmas
would.
with?
People would also look at Christmas time so they can bring somebody with them to family reunions, or for the New Year's party, or Valentine's Day, things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Valentine's Day is always a good time.
Yes.
So.
New beginnings.
Yeah.
I think for my business, for business owners, I have to check out which business. I have to see the timing activity for each business. I must understand that because, for instance, some businesses it's better for them to promote their stand or focus on their marketing during the summer. Maybe not during the other time of the year. So. For my business, I have to first of all understand the timing activity for the business that I'm looking for to support them for growing their business.
Well, for B2B as well, it's one of those things where I know lots of people say that cold calling is dead, but it's one of those things that depends on how you do it. If you phone up somebody and say, do you need marketing or PR, the chances of finding somebody that says, oh, do you know what, that's on top of my to-do list today, let's have a conversation. But you phone them up and say, when's your contract up? How do you do PR right now? Do you use an agency or you do it in-house? Are you looking to get an agency involved, or are you happy doing it? Because then at least you know that for the next period of time they're happy with doing what they're doing, and there's no opportunity, and you move on and you use the time. But if they say, oh, actually we're using an agency, we're not very happy, we're actually looking to for somebody else in March. Send them over some information. Can I send you some information on what we do? I'll give you a call back in March and see if we can get on the tender list. So it's all about that understanding, and that's different for every business. So
I would say my timing activity is in the summer with new construction going up, construction building or renovation.
Yeah.
And the cleaning business, that's where I would be.
cool. So did you do anything this year to make use of the summer? No, that's fine. But it's good that you know that, because it's one of those things where you can invest the effort in making sure that you've got stuff. Because the summer, it will happen much earlier than the summer, so you've got all that lead time now. You've got maybe the back end of the year to get stuff ready, and then from January you've got that push, and it just builds. So it's good that you know when that is, because it means that everything can be tailored towards it.
Plan for it,
Yeah.
4 to 6 months prior to the time.
And it takes that long sometimes. I mean, everyone would love to think that you pick up the phone to somebody and you close a deal, or you meet someone in the street or at a show or an event and you close the deal. But the validation process, and this will change, it's different depending on the value of the item, the information that you're asking from the customer, and the closeness of the relationship. It's different for every business, and sometimes it takes long. I've got friends that work in businesses where the time from initial contacts to actually getting to the point of pitch and tender is 2 years, because it's defence, so they have to build a plan to be able to do that.
I want to suggest, Doris, that some cultures, like Persian culture, before their new year, they have to clean deeply their home. Everywhere. So it's a culture. And our new year is in March. So it's good to just to know different culture, give them some special offers for that time, because mostly in the community, the business owner in the community, they have time limitation. So at that time, maybe it's a good time for you to promote yourself. Yeah, and I've heard Chinese people have these too. So before the New Year, Chinese people don't do like that. So it's good to come to my mind and I'm sure.
To go to that point, it ties in with the idea that the right people. So if it's Persian community in March that have a need for it, and even getting some help in developing something that's in Persian, so that you're communicating, you understand the cultural requirement or the cultural imperative there, which just yeah.
Yes, for my business, my value venture because of moving. Right now, I have them to deal with my not only my neighborhood. I can deal with neighborhood and create activity. That's what I used to do. When I say activity, I used to have dance activity because I used to dance cultural dance too. Any dance, salsa, bachata, merengue, whatever dance.
Excellent. I've done right.
My music, they call it compa. So I'm going to create those with my food because that's what I do in the United States. I went up park and I prepare the kids to dance and I put them on the stage to start dancing and people come to see and they come to buy my food.
Yeah.
So everything combined together, that's my plan for next year. So do activity with kids or adults. And you can put them together, do something, and by the time my food will be pushing up.
And it's one of those things. You understand the chain. You understand the hierarchy of events. So there are things you can do, to kind of make that happen. It's, even if it's within, hours, you're kind of pushing people down that chain to get them to come to you.
The problem is each country is different. So I used to do activity in a park, just find the park and do things.
Yeah.
But Canada is very different. You have to go there, you have to go there. If you don't qualify, even ready, you cannot go.
Yeah.
So that took me time to learn about Canada. And finally, I'm in micro skill and I learn a lot. Now I'm ready to go back to my body.
No, sorry, do you have your hand up, Neil?
Yeah, I do, it's kind of a perpetual cycle with me. I find out the renewal dates for group insurance because it's a yearly
Bang,
term.
there you go.
And then enter in a competitive bid maybe a month or two at a time. And if they're overinsured, then or not thrilled with their service, then they'll change it over.
Yeah. It's understanding, if you understand the timing and stuff, you understand when people are looking to renew, the chances of you closing something are infinitely higher than if you just phone up randomly saying, oh,
Yeah.
got something to sell.
It's part of my daily activities.
Yeah.
I find out whether, like if they're already insured, if they've got it, and then just plug it into the calendar. And then it's,
The other thing is making it goes back to the audience as well. You make notes, you speak to them. You say we'll be looking at policies up in August, or in April or August.
right.
And you remember when we spoke, you said the policy was up. The fact that you've
Yeah.
remembered and you can tell them that you know that.
Yeah.
Again, it's it's
Who
just
they are,
that.
their name,
Yeah.
position, everything.
Yeah.
Just resume it.
It's information is power.
Yeah. With research and feedbacks, and even my own lifestyle, I've seen that with the trend of fashion, you find out how much people are trying to save more during the summertime buying their winter clothing.
Yeah.
And getting to winter buying the summer clothing so they will save more.
Yeah.
And then you find out that during the summer, it's actually those that wanting to buy new stuffs
Yeah.
that are already in vogue. And not really like
Okay.
actually wanting to like buy stuff like new stuffs or buying stuff that they know that are less expensive at that time, that is safest.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's because it gives you that, you know, information that enables you to have the stuff that you know people are looking for, you know, when they're looking, and most places aren't providing it. You know, most places are seasonal. It drives me mad sometimes. You know, kind of the weather's been like it has been the last few days, and you know, you now go in somewhere and the winter clothes. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think the United States is so much different than we are because, like, you can go to the United States and find summer clothes in the wintertime.
Wintertime.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. I don't know why we don't do it because when we go on vacation, we need summer clothes, and it's so hard to find summer clothes.
But it's funny as well because when I first came to Canada, you know, you see is it one of the bikini shops.
Yes.
Bikini
In the
Village.
winter.
There we go. I was going to say Bikini Depot, but that's probably, you know, not quite the one. But I said to Steph, why? How does that have a business? You know, kind of in the winter? And she said, well, because people go somewhere warm. Yeah, they go to Florida. They go.
One new bathing suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wore this one last year, or 6 months out of one. It's
Yeah.
exactly you.
So, but it was that thing in the the UK. People, there aren't really seasons that people go on holiday. They'll go, you know, whenever they can get time off work or the kids aren't in school or whatever. But I hadn't realised there was this cultural thing where a lot of people, you know, they either go to the cottage, I guess, or go skiing, or they go, you know, to Florida or Caribbean or wherever. I guess the thing is as well, if you go kind of skiing and stuff like that, they've got hot tubs and stuff, so you're going to need it,
Yep.
you know. So, but that's really what it's about. It's about understanding, you know, your customer's timing, your customer's need, and if there are lead times on it, because you get people that, you know, as we talked about before, your end customer may have people they need to influence, and in order to get to the point where they're able to buy, there may be stuff they need to do first in order to make that happen. Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, about the bikinis you're talking about, like to be in a bikini business, you have to have passion with it, you have to deal with it. Because there's a time I was dealing with a business and I don't match with it.
Yeah.
Because I'm selling bikini and I wear with jeans. Nobody come to me. So if you don't be with your customer, isn't your business to your customer, you're not going to be business.
Yeah.
Because I used to live in the island. So other people make money, I don't. I say, why I don't sell? Somebody say, no, you don't visit your business.
Yeah.
I say, how I'm going to visit my business? Say, wear a bikini.
Yeah.
So the day she forced me to wear a bikini, and that day I sold for $700 in stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, so that's why you say have a passion for business.
Yeah. It's living the brand. It's embodying. You know, again, it goes back to understanding your customer. You know,
Yeah,
because it matters.
Yeah, but it's the same thing, like you go into a store, which is a plus size, and you're plus size and you have a skinny girl selling it. You're not going to have any business because, number one, you're looking at this skinny girl and you need to go in, what can she really tell you?
Yeah.
And I find that when you go into a plus size, they have women who are plus size and they're wearing it, you get more excited, so you have to match it.
Well, it's one of those things. I mean, you all hear about the stuff with Abercrombie and Fitch. There's the whole kind of furore in the media about the fact that somebody had written that the CEO of the company had said that that they didn't. I forget what it was now. He was never going to have plus size clothes in their stores. And I mean, the truth was that he actually never said that. He didn't kind of make, because there was a whole thing about sizing, and what he'd said was that his market, his customers, were young and thin.
Yes.
And you know, it's kind of, I think the term he used was young and beautiful, young, thin, and beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, well, you know, he should be made to stock plus size clothes and most, you know, kind of, you know, have a bigger range. And the whole point was that because it was size related, it upset a lot of people. But in reality, it was a product marketing decision.
Yeah, so that's
Because-
who he caters to.
Yeah.
There's
It's like-
stores that cater to plus size, there's stores that cater to medium, and there's stores that cater to skinny.
Yeah.
Because when petite, because when you go in certain places I go in, and I'm like, okay, I can't fit in that. where I can go in winters and I can wear junior jeans, and somebody go, you wear junior? I go, yeah. I can fit in the junior jeans and a top.
Yeah.
Someplace else, I go, I cannot wear that. I have to wear like an extra large,
Yeah.
and it's so different. So some people they cater, and you kind of know the stores who cater to whatever size. And if it doesn't cater to you, you go to the one that caters to you, because everybody cannot carry everything.
Yeah.
Like,
But and the whole point was that people were saying that it damaged his brand and all of this, and it's like he was communicating to the people that shop at his store that are young, thin, and think they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Whatever the definition of beautiful is, but
Yeah.
you know, and the people that he was supposed to have upset were never going to shop at his store anyway
yeah.
because he didn't stock anything that they could
For
fit
them.
into. So it's one of those things where I'm not advocating upsetting people, but the whole point is if you understand your audience and the message, and the timing, you can create this message which speaks only to the people that are likely to become your customers. And in reality, if you have a niche business where you're targeting one specific type of customer, then you can focus only on that, and what everyone else thinks is really unimportant.
Yeah.
The ethics and the integrity and the trustworthiness are all kind of givens with a young business. But in terms of focusing the marketing, you only want to worry about the people that are people that are likely to become your customers. Obviously, if you've got a business that scales and you've got different groups, you have to be aware of all of those rather than going down such a thin kind of marketing route that you're alienating them when you're then going to want to come back and say, well, actually, we've got something for you as well. But it's about understanding, who your audience is, so you can make those informed decisions. And it's amazing how few companies sometimes understand that. It's they want to go after everyone, and they try and have and the whole thing with Abercrombie as well was that a lot of companies would have felt the pressure to have conformed and to have had a broader product range. But he knows who his market is. He knows who shops at the shops. He knows where the money is. I wish that Ferrari would do a $30,000 car, but I guess if they did a $30,000 car, the people that paid $200,000 for it wouldn't want to buy
Buy a Ferrari.
So
you have to have.
And then you have the risk of people looking down at you who
Yeah.
buy for expensive
Well,
cars like
we were
Yeah.
actually, I was talking with Jay. I was talking with Jay earlier on about Apple because I'm a big fan of the company.
Yeah.
But I think since Steve Jobs left the
Oh,
company,
he died and the company
It's-
like on haywires.
but they've now got a cheap iPhone, and it's like, why does anybody want to buy a cheap iPhone?
Yeah.
Because the whole point was that the iPhone was the phone to have, and it was a status symbol. So you create a cheap iPhone, it's like you're going to get
It's degrading.
you're dividing your market where the people that can afford the main one are going to look, oh, you bought the cheap iPhone, did you? And nobody really wants that.
Yeah. Then
So-
you might as well just go buy a cheap phone then.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole
It's
thing.
a very
Because what an iPhone can do, and a lot of people here complain, but I tell them, iPhone is one of the best phones on the market, but what they're doing
Well,
now
I'm
is...
a
I
Samsung
used to
bro.
think so.
I know.
I used to
I'm
think
like,
so, but I bought an
and
Android
he's
now.
a crackberry.
yeah.
And I give him my iPhone, and he's still trying to figure it out. But give me-
iPhones are so easy.
No, but give
They're
me
so simple.
But you know that a lot of people who use certain, but give me his BlackBerry, I can crack that, I can do everything. I love it.
Samsung is.
But I'm an
is harder
iPhone girl.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing.
But
That's
I know my
that's
family's
the
turning against me with the iPhones now. They're all going to iPhone.
But I've had this for like 3 years, nothing is wrong with
Really?
this phone. It looks like brand new. I've had people went through about 5 phones already, and I'm like, what?
Wow.
But it's exactly what you just said. I'm an iPhone girl. That's what you want. That's the whole point of the marketing. You want to bring
Yes.
people in that
To say I'm a
They're your-
Malaika girl.
they're your customers. They associate with the brand.
Yes.
Because then they become the embodiment of it, and they help with the marketing. The referral, the recommendation. That's really what you're trying to do is create that affinity with the brand, so that there's no chance you're going to go and buy anything else.
What do you have there?
I've got an Android,
He's an Android.
which is given the fact that everything else I own is Mac.
It's mad.
But when I moved to Canada, I had a UK iPhone that wouldn't work here, and it got a bit beaten up. I tend to abuse my phones, and I got here, and being new in the country, the only phone I could get was a BlackBerry. So I thought, well, it's business, and it'll be fine. And so I had one of the phones, and it was okay. But then the battery life was just awful, and then it just stopped doing anything much. And I kind of use my phone, I guess, as most entrepreneurs do. I use it quite a lot, and I just couldn't get by without having to recharge it every, kind of half day. And if I ended up without a phone, people couldn't get hold of me, and I couldn't make phone calls. And you're working with journalists on deadlines and stuff with some customers. It's difficult because journalists want to get hold of you in very tight deadlines, and if you're just out of contact, it's you can't really do the job. But I wanted to buy another iPhone. I wanted to buy, but then I didn't like the 4. I don't like the 5 because I think the size is wrong. And the thing was, I loved the fact about the original one that it curved in your hand. And this is curved now and it fits in my hand. It's Android, and I will never go back unless Apple releases something that is unbelievable. I'll never go back. So it's one of those things where you create that affinity with the brand. You've then got the hassle of maintaining it, or you've got the responsibility to maintain it. Because I think Apple's on a hiding to nothing right now, because they've released 2 sets of phones over 2 years that effectively look identical.
Yeah.
And now they've created a cheaper version, which...
That's what we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's like Apple is now like they've lost innovation, and what they should probably now move to is television.
Yeah.
Because,
That's hard though. The reason why that hasn't come out, I don't know this, but my gut feeling, I work with some companies in the TV technology space, is making it different is hard.
Yeah.
Because if you think the TV, although it's got thinner and it's kind of higher definition over the last 80, 90 years, it fundamentally hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And they're reliant on cable operators for content, and they have good revenue, models right now. So changing that's going to be difficult. I think they're in a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
I have a feeling they're going to go the way that BlackBerry have done, not overnight, but I think they've started that process now, and unless they can get a grip, they're going to struggle. I wrote, there's a lot of stuff on what BlackBerry did wrong and what they should have done on my blog. So if you're interested in reading
I think
that.
BlackBerry was good for business though, but they should
have stayed the way they were.
Yeah.
They should have stayed the way they were.
The tools in their phone was good for if you had a business.
Yes.
Well, and that's the thing. I wrote this piece about 2 years ago, 18 months ago, where that was exactly the point I made, and it goes back to the audience. Their audience weren't consumers. They weren't iPhone users. They were people that were using it for business. And they should have stayed developing the handset for that audience. They should have developed marketing that was focused on that audience. And they didn't. They tried to go after iPhone users. They tried to go after consumers. Of course, the message is different. So if you're a business user of the iPhone, the business user of BlackBerry, you think, okay, were they interested in me, or I thought they understood me, but now they're doing this, and it's
because they had their market and they had the customers who will actually stay because it was a business and that's what they were geared to. They should have stayed, and I think they should go back.
Yes, I would so buy the product.
They should go right back
I would
to it.
so buy it.
It's hard to go back.
Go back, yeah, I know. They didn't.
I could talk about Apple and BlackBerry all day, but we'll move on. If you want to read what I wrote about them, this is on my blog, so I'll give you the details at the end. Okay, so we've done audience, we've done message, we've done timing. The final piece really of the 4 kind of piece strategy is the right channel. That was the best thing I could find for channel. I think it's a bit of draining or wiring or whatever. So people now think that social media is a good way to talk to people, to kind of promote their businesses, to engage people. Although, having said that, I don't know of very many conversations that actually take place, many business conversations that actually take place on Twitter or Facebook. It's all kind of outbound marketing, it's all promotional stuff. It's a really good way to have a conversation, but very few companies are actually using it in that way. But the best way to make a decision on the channels to use is look and see where your audience is. So if your audience is using Facebook, then Facebook's probably a good bet for starting those conversations. If they're not, if they're on Twitter, then that's a good place. If they're not on any social networks, then you're wasting your time using social media. If your customers come from face-to-face meetings, from community events, from networking events, from shows, whether it's hair shows or it's a festival with food, or whether it's a place where people are going, maybe meet-up groups to meet, to look for a potential partner, then that's the best way to connect with your audience. Everything else is just making more work for you. It's one of those things that people don't realise. The more channels you try and cover, the longer you spend sat in front of a computer.
I need your kind of specialty about the same thing you're talking about, the channeling. I find that as much as I try social media, I am not savvy. It doesn't matter how much I go and I know to do it. It's not working.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of people have been trying to get me to do Facebook, and there's, when there's no desire, it didn't matter what, I keep going back to this. What did people use before all of this comes into play? Because when I talk to you, I don't even know who you are. The picture you put, I don't know if that's your picture. And I have a Twitter, and I think the last time I was on it, I think was maybe June.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how long. I have a LinkedIn. I don't want to even talk. I don't want to do anything. I don't find that. How do you kind of interpret that? Because I was always thinking, find somebody. Yeah, I can give them the words. They can type it. It's mine. It's what I want. But I don't have that interest in this social media thing.
I think that when you start to go, so you're talking about going down the route of having somebody else kind of use social media for you, as you.
No, not really. It's almost like saying, if I type my words, what I really want to put on it, you do that. But I don't even feel that. I don't feel any of this social media thing. It's almost like me saying, if I see you, like yesterday, I was really, really tired. I felt so bad. This lady was in the elevator, and she started talking, I love your hair, it's beautiful. But I wanted to say to her, it's not my hair, but I just let her go on. And she goes, I wish my curls can do this, my hair this. And I wanted to explain to her my product, what my body was saying.
Yeah.
I can't do it, I just need to go upstairs.
Yeah.
I like that interaction to say to her, the curls that you've got, there's a product that can help you. You want to wear it straight, here it is.
Yeah.
That's me. I like to talk and explain to her the highlights that you put in your hair. That's causing the interaction of your curls and now intertwine even tighter.
Yeah.
That's me. Social media is not me.
Well, it's interesting because I still maintain that people buy from people. And it's what you said, what did people do before social media? Well, they had to talk to each other.
Yes.
Whether that was in person or they picked up the phone, and all these people saying that, calling sales calls are dead. Bad sales calls were never alive, and there are too many people doing bad sales calls. But actually, if you do it right and you start out by offering something and looking to find out something rather than just selling, then it has a purpose. But only if the person is interested, it's somebody that's likely to buy, has a need to buy, and there's somebody that you have a chance of converting. Social media is a bit like, the kind of mass email blasts that people did. They're putting them out there, and they're essentially hoping somebody will find it. It's like media coverage. You're getting an article in the newspaper, hoping that the person that you want to see it, that might be your customer, will see it and will be motivated enough to do something. I think one of the things that is misunderstood is there's become this thing about timing as well, about you do it at 9, 12, 4, 5, whatever it is. Depends on who your customer is though. If you've got customers overseas, they're on a different time zone, then you need to, but it's social media is not the kind of cure-all. It's not the marketing future. We'll come on and talk about some of the things that you can do that will make it easier for you to connect in a minute. But social media is something that you need to do if your customers are there, but you need to do it sparingly. You don't need to be on there all the time, just blasting out messages, because it doesn't present the image that you want for the company. Sorry, what was the question?
Yes, for me, Facebook is a good tool for me.
Yeah.
The first time I bought my food on Facebook, people in New York, Miami called me. It's about time for the food that I It's a nice tool.
That's awesome.
And people in Canada replied to me saying, is it only Haitian food you can cook? Can you cook for me? I say yes, because I can cook American food, some French food, combined with my food. I say, okay, we'll do that. Like Facebook is where my audience maybe is because they reply to me. Sometimes they say I like this.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Food's huge on social media. I mean, so for you, it's probably great because you see people in restaurants, rather than eating the food, they're taking a
The
picture of it and
that's why I
posting
noticed
it.
in the restaurant.
Instagram as well. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, if that's what's working, then that's one of the routes to kind of to get to your audience.
Yeah. Also, some cook sent me some recipe to help me to boost me. Said you can do this, you can do that because I enjoy food.
Pinterest would be excellent for you.
Yeah.
Pinterest.
Yeah.
It's visual until they invent. I'm hoping that someday somebody will do this. They can invent a social network where you can actually smell and taste the food.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's I will do nothing else. That's when I retire and I'll just sit in a room and
What is
so
it? What is it?
Smell and taste the food.
yeah. When they create a social network where you can smell and taste it, I'm retiring. That's my days sorted.
Some food, even though you're hiding inside to cook it,
Yeah.
as long as you put garlic on it, it get out.
Yeah.
Because I used to in the Kipling, anytime I cook my food, they know what food I cook. So there's a white lady, she come and say, she said, okay, I need your food. I said, who tell you I'm cooking this? Your food, go to my house. I said, come inside, and we sit down and eat.
It's there's a guy that I know, and food is very. I don't know enough about it, but it presses certain triggers in people. There's a guy that is a friend of mine who has a butcher's, and people go in there and they want to deal with him. So he works crazy hours because he knows when they go in there, whether it's what the day of the week it is. With some cultures, he'll know what they're cooking. So they'll ask him for something, and so you want it chopped like this, or you want it done in a certain way. He knows that. He knows what the customer wants. And he couldn't deliver it. He couldn't have it delivered to them because they like the experience of going into the store, and they like the chat and the banter and the fun of going in, and the fact that he knows exactly what they want. So for him, having a store is the only way he can do it, and he it's just understanding what that delivery mechanism is. Some people don't need stores or even offices. You can do it in different ways.
I think in life, food and music, I think they match together.
Yeah.
Somebody who likes music, they're always happy to, you can see the person dance,
Yeah.
when they do their dance. That's the same thing when somebody cook. Like, for me, when I dice my food, I dance with it.
Well-
because I like to do it. That's what I said in life. Food and music, I can put it in the
Yeah. I think a lot of people do. I think it's the same things that people get triggered because food and music.
Yeah.
So and that's one of the things, understanding what the triggers are. By understanding the customer, understanding your industry, you'll understand those things that enable you then to create that experience, and that's how you start to build the brand. It might be that you're known as being the dancing chef or the dancing cook. That's what people remember about you, about the experience of getting food from you, or about what they know about you, because you've told them or you've shared it with them. There's videos of you dancing while you're cooking. So it's all of these things that help to build, their vision of your brand, their experience of your brand. One of the other things that I was going to say, regardless of the channel that you use, one of the key things is to start a conversation. You'll see lots of people, when they're marketing or promoting, which actually talks about what they do, but there's no conversation in there. There's no two-way, there's no listening. They're not understanding what they're being told, or they're not asking for any information. They're simply saying, I've got something that I want you to buy, and waiting for those people that are the people that will want to buy from them to find them. So starting a conversation is always a good way. One, it's great in terms of information. The amount of information you can gather that will help you to market and do PR better is invaluable, simply from understanding people's day-to-day lives, the stresses and strains, the challenges that are going on. So if you can try and start conversations, that's always a good thing to do. Listen and observe. Said, just watch what's going on. find out what you can learn, and participate. Be an active member of it without actually having a requirement to get anything from it. One of the big things, I was at South by Southwest, which if you don't know, it's a tech, music and movie festival. And I go for the tech and interactive part of it. It was great because every time you sat down talking to somebody, whether it was in a bar, whether it was at an event, whether you were just having coffee or whatever, one of the first questions that people asked was, what can I do to help you? Before, this is what I do, and this is why I'm here, and I'm looking for investment, or I'm looking for customers, or I'm looking for a combination. It was, what can I do for you? And one of those things about being part of your customers' or prospective customers' worlds is being an active participant, where you're giving value without actually selling a product or service. We've talked about allowing people to taste the food, about getting people involved in the community, about kind of community events. It's all about being seen to be a part of it because you want to be a part of it, and that's if it means that you go to events, you go out to networking events, or you go to industry events, or you actually go out and meet a customer, or you meet a prospect, in their office, or on wherever it is they do business from, or wherever they live. If that's what it takes, showing that you're actually participating in their world and you value the experience rather than just the opportunity to sell to them, can be quite powerful as well. And you'll find what the channels are from that. You'll find out whether it is actually going to their homes and talking to them, taking stuff to them for them to try, or whether it's doing some that way, doing some on social media, whether there are other opportunities. I was just thinking about with social media as well. There's an increasing number of niche social networks. So there'll be one for hair salon owners, or people that work in that industry. There'll be people for food. There's a food network. MySpace has become a social network for musicians and bands and people that are operating in that industry. There are also language-based social networks. I won't try and pronounce the name of the Chinese social networks, but for the Chinese Mandarin and Cantonese speaking populations, there are their own social networks that most people in the Western world, in the English speaking world, have never come across, will never use. It's purely for people that speak that specific language or are from specific cultures. So also look at those as well, because rather than doing Facebook, it might be that there's a smaller network, but it's specifically tailored to the audience group demographic that you're trying to communicate with, and communicating with them via that platform rather than via Facebook or Twitter might be a better way to go. It's smaller, but you actually know that there are people that have a shared interest or are likely to be potential customers for your business.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to say something. In your business, customer service is the key, and it's the way you serve your customer. For me, I have something on me I never know until I find out in July in a festival. There is a guy who comes to buy me because I do customer service. I have to explain everything in selling. And the guy coming to me and said, "Did you work for somebody?" And I smiled. He said, "Why you smile? I'm here to steal you." I said, "But you cannot steal me, you can bow me."
Yeah.
He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm the owner of that business. If you need my help, I will be there for you, but you cannot steal."
Yeah.
So that when I go home, I'm thinking about it. I say, what I do? But the guy told me, the way you serve your customer, you always smile with your customer. Even some of them, they're not happy with because I have somebody else. They're not happy. I say, okay, put it on the side, I will solve the problem. That's what I said. When there is a problem, I'm quick to resolve the problem right away.
Yeah.
So that's why the guy came and said, "I want you to work in my company." I said, "I can help your company,
Yeah.
but I cannot let my
Yeah.
business down."
Yeah.
He said, "Okay."
Well, and it's one of those things that you work with people in different ways, and I found out that because one of my challenges was that people have an expectation of PR people. They have an expectation they work in a certain way and that they behave in a certain way, and I don't do that. It's probably why I didn't enjoy working in agencies, because I wasn't that kind of person. And the more I've worked with entrepreneurs, I've had more and more feedback saying that actually they like the fact that we're not like a traditional PR people. We're not like an agency that goes in there and tells them what they should be doing. What we do is we go in and listen and ask questions, which then enable them to kind of basically make decisions about their own business. Yeah, it's because we're not, the way that our business is set up, my business is set up, is that we don't do long-term relationships as a default. If people want to work with us long-term, that's great, but they work on their terms, not on ours. And so there are times where we want them to have the skills to be able to continue it, because it's great if it works while we're involved, but that doesn't really kind of work. They need to be able to do it once they're on their own, either through budget or through resource, or just because they don't need us anymore. And it's one of those things where if a customer doesn't need us anymore, that's great. We know that we've gotten to a point where it works, and they'll recommend us to others. And it's one of those things about giving people the skills, giving people the ability. But one of the greatest pieces of feedback I got was somebody said, "Thank you for treating me like I'm important, because I'm the entrepreneur, I'm the owner of the business." And you go into a traditional PR process, and it's just, well, this is the process that you buy. This is the only way you can buy it. You need X amount of money to get in, and you buy a certain period of time, and you go through the same process that everybody else does. So it's understanding, the platform and using the feedback, and you don't really get feedback other than people complaining on social media. Very few people say, "Actually, that was really good. I really enjoyed that," or you did a really good job. The customer service was great, or it's all about people saying, "Oh, I really wasn't very happy, and you didn't do this, and you didn't do that, and the plane was late," and So it's one of those things. They use each channel, advisedly. Use it, in the right way. I'm going to put this back up again. Engage brain, open mouth. With any platform, whatever it is you do, think about it before you do it. Whether it's typed and written or whether it's spoken, think about what you're saying before you say it. It's always a thing where I love doing radio live, because there are no second chances. If you say something and you're live, everybody hears it. And that was always the challenge for me, was to get that process where I'm self-filtering while I'm talking. And it's one of those things, you see too many marketers just type the first thing that comes to mind, and then they have to backpedal and they have to apologise, and they said something stupid, and there are people who tell you, well, it's an opportunity to get you known, by saying something. And it's like, yeah, you get known, but the people that are really important to your customers will remember. And if you've made an idiot of yourself, or you've said something inappropriate, or you've done something wrong, they will remember. There'll be a big noise and a big fuss about it being shared on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever. 99% of those people weren't your customers, never will be your customers. You need to worry about the impact that it has on that, 7.5 people out of 300,000 that are the people that really care and that really matter to your business. So just before you press send or enter on anything to post it, just think about it and think, if I look at it, tomorrow morning, will I think, actually, perhaps I wouldn't have posted it. So, the media as an audience, which is what I'm assuming, or from experience, most PR presentations start with. Because PR is about talking to the media, isn't it? It's about talking to journalists, and it's about getting coverage, and it's... don't get me wrong, media has a place. But if you haven't got the other bits in place, all you're doing is sending stuff out there. It's like SETI. They're sending out signals hoping to find extraterrestrial life. But how many planets are there? The chances of them finding anything. And when you do media relations, that's really what you're doing. It's awareness. People will know about you, but if you're not saying the right thing, it's all a bit of a waste of time and money and energy. The other thing I was going to say about media as well is that journalists want to write about interesting stuff. They have the same value set as you and your customers and the people that read their magazine. Go back to the Guardian example. If they get it wrong and they write stories that their audience don't understand, don't appreciate, is expressing a point of view which isn't in line with their value set, then all of a sudden people start looking for somewhere else to get their news from. And journalists understand that. It's one of the biggest frustrations, is that they get sent all of this stuff, which is just stuff. It's promotional. The press releases are about, I've launched a product. And as I always say, software company launching a piece of software isn't news. It's kind of what you'd expect them to do. So when you deal with journalists, it's a number of things that you need to think about. The first is creating a compelling story. One of the best ways to get a journalist interested is to actually think about what you're sending them, to think about their audience, and to think about what they're trying to do. Because if you're trying to get into a publication or on a website, presumably the readers of that site are going to be people that you want to have as customers. And journalists are doing exactly the same job as you're trying to do. They're trying to give their customers, their readers, something that's interesting, something that's relevant, something that speaks in words and phrases the way that they do, has the same ideals and ethics and morals as they do. So creating a compelling story is quite important. So these are some of the things that, there are four things that create traditionally good stories. Scandal is one of them. Bad news is another. I tell you, if you do something wrong or you mess up and the press get hold of it,
It's gone.
and you will have more media attention than you ever dreamt of. And of course, it's at that one time where you never want to speak to a journalist. So and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be kind of really bad, but something that is, has a negative spin on it, which they can use, is something that's human interest. So people, kids, that's always something that goes down well. And currency, so it's something that's happening now. So if you can tie it in with something that is going on in the world, and we talked about in terms of the messaging and the timing, understanding when your customers, your prospects are in the mode where they're seeking to get a service or a product that you're offering, because they're hungry, because they need a new wardrobe, because they need a new product for their hair, because they need help marketing their business. Finding a way to make it current is always a good way. And currency changes as well. It can be daily, it can be seasonal, it can be monthly, it can be as a trend, which doesn't really have a start and a stop. It's just something that evolves in and out. There's also things that happen that you have no control over. And as much as you can plan in terms of the timing, there'll be things that will suddenly become big stories and will mean that yours is no longer current. And I always remember there was a company that I worked with, their marketing director, and this I still shake my head when I think about what happened. Marketing director got sacked because the CEO wasn't happy. We'd got them coverage in 2 editions of the Financial Times on one day. And the marketing director was sacked because he didn't get them in all 3. And the difference between the first 2 they were in and the one they weren't in was the fact that 2 big telco companies in the UK had essentially merged. So it was a $10 billion deal. It's something that we had no control over, they had no control over, the journalists had no control over, but because this story had broken, the CEO didn't realise that that might be a slightly more current story than the story that they'd had in 2 editions. Marketing director was, dispatched. And it's crazy. There are things that you have no control over, but understanding, what's current and what's not. And also, it helps when you're talking to journalists. If you know something like that's happened, don't try calling them on the afternoon that happens, because they've got other priorities. No matter how big yours is, sometimes the story that you have isn't going to match the one that they already have. There's a presentation that I was at. I think it's the demo day, the end of last year. This is John Biggs, who's one of the editors of TechCrunch, and he said this is what you need to do to attract journalists' attention: do something cool, tell them about it, and then do it again. And he said the difficult thing about that is do it again. So, because everybody can do something cool or interesting once. What they're really interested in is seeing you continually do it. And this is what feeds into the traditional PR model, is that the whole press release thing is about presumably press releases are cool stuff. And in reality, most press releases are all just promotional vehicles for stuff that isn't really that interesting to anybody other than the company that's trying to sell it. So when you're looking at the stuff that you provide to journalists, to press releases, to information around a story, think about it and see if you can replicate it. Only send them the stuff that's really cool, that really matters. It's the stuff that they're really going to be interested in. All of the other stuff is kind of background noise, and they won't see it anyway, or they'll ignore it, or they'll delete it. But if you only send them stuff occasionally when you're continually doing stuff that is really cool, really interesting to their audience, you'll stand out because you make that differentiation that you only contact them when there's something that they're going to be interested in. And also, if you try and bless you, bless you. No worries.
Apologize for nature.
If you try and do something cool as well, it comes across as you trying to be cool. So it has to be cool by your audience's definition rather than by your definition generally. And that goes back into validating it. When you're looking at planning a story, talk to the people that you're trying to sell it to, that are like them. There's actually one story, I was going to tell it later on, but it seems kind of an appropriate time to tell it now. Obama's campaign back in 2008, Yes We Can. Does anybody know how that was created? Because marketeers were trying to figure it out, and there was an article that was written at the time that explains it, and when you understand, it's crazy. Does anybody know the story? No? Well,
To go back as a country, was it? To build up back as a country, was that the one?
yeah, it was the Yes We Can, yeah. So that's basically, to kind of rejuvenate the country and to... Well, everyone thinks it was some smart, highly paid PR person or marketing strategist that came up with the idea for it. The reality was that he's known for being somebody that uses the internet, social media, to kind of help with what he does. But the Yes We Can campaign actually came from him going onto forums, going onto community groups of people that he thought would vote for him, so democratic-leaning voters, and saying, if I was running for president, what should I say? What should I run on? What are the principles? What are the policies that you want, somebody like me to talk about, to champion? So people came back and said, well, this is what, and the Yes We Can slogan came up, regularly in all of these forums. So what he did was he said, okay, we'll use that, and fed it back to them. So when he got the nomination, he said, okay, he said that, he didn't actually say this overtly, but the slogan was, I've listened to you. You've told me this is the policies that I need to stand on. I need to run with, and this is the slogan which you've told me is something you want to hear me say. And of course, people voted for him because he was telling them what they wanted to hear. Simple. So, dealing with the press, don't phone them up and say, I've launched a product and I want you to write about me, because you'll probably get a very rude response. And they probably won't talk to you again, and they'll probably complain you're wasting their time, and all of these things. Journalists have a reputation for being grumpy. In general, they're not grumpy, they just kind of get tired of people phoning them up saying, I've launched something, can you write about me? Because I want to make lots of money. And so one of the best ways to do it is to become an asset for them. Phone them up and say, this is me, this is my business, how can I help? And they'll say, but what are you launching? I'm not. you're important to my business. You write for the audience that I'm trying to communicate with, but it also goes back to the stuff we talked about earlier on about participating, being part of it, to listening. What can I do to help? You may be looking for comment on something that I can't give you, but I know 50 other people that work in the industry that one of them is going to be relevant. Somebody will be able to give you what you need. And if that's me enabling it, then great. I'm happy to help you. Because then what happens next time is you set them up and you help them to get what they need. Next time they need something, who are they going to call? Do you know somebody? I'm looking at this, or actually I'm writing this article about this topic that I know you're interested in. What should I be talking about? What are the things that matter? And by becoming that asset to the journalist, you get the opportunities. So when you do have a product to launch or something you want to write about, you phone them up and you say, "How you doing? I've just got this. I don't know if you're interested, but I want to let you know, because I know you write about these things. I'll send it over for you to have a look at. Let me know what you think." And because you've helped them, there's a better than average chance that they'll return the favour. Because you've got that relationship with them that isn't just, "I want you to do something for me." It's, "I'm very happy to do whatever I can to help you." Most journalists, certainly when I was working in London, they could go out and get very happily drunk on somebody else's ticket most nights of the week. And when you spoke to them, what they really wanted to do was go home early. They wanted to get their job done to the best they could do it so that their bosses were pleased and that they could go home and spend time with their wife, partner, kids. They weren't interested in going out drinking every night, which is what most PR people seem to do. I think that's the way to get journalists to do what they want, thinks that you have some kind of relationship there. Well, the only relationship you have is after 3 pints of beer and you both wake up with a headache, rather than actually helping them to do their job. When I first started in PR, most journalists were writing for a print magazine that was weekly, quarterly, sometimes half-yearly. Websites started to come along, so they had websites to do as well, but a lot of the copy was repurposed. Now, those same journalists, and there are probably less of them in each newsroom than there ever were back when I started in the late 90s, they have a magazine to do, which is either weekly, monthly, quarterly. They have a website to do which updates in real time. They have maybe 4 or 5 newsletters to do a week. They have podcasts. They have video hangouts to do or video webcasts to do. Plus they have copies to write for another publication which is part of the same publishing group. They have 6 times, 7 times, 8 times as many things to do and only the same amount of time. So if you can become an asset for them, you can help them to do that job to the same standard as they would have done when they were just doing one piece of that jigsaw, then you start to build a relationship where you help them, they'll help you. So we already talked about that, offering help before you ask for it. The other thing is understand journalists. Most people think journalists are difficult. They phone up with very short deadlines. They want things instantly, and sometimes they do. But they don't do it because that's how they are. That's not their nature. They do it because their editors just dropped something on their desk and said, "I need 200 words on that in 20 minutes." That's why they phone you up and say, "I've got a 20-minute deadline." So understanding that, and understanding that if you phone them up and they sound stressed and they sound like they're in a hurry to get off the phone, they probably are, because they've got a deadline coming up. So sometimes you phone them up, and if you get them in that frame of mind, actually backing out and saying, "I can hear you're busy, it's not that important right now, I'll phone you back another time," wins a lot of friends, because it shows that you understand how they work. You understand they have deadlines. For the kind of Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, they go to print for the print copy kind of early evening. So between 4 and 6 most weekdays is just crazy for them. So just don't try phoning them between 4 and 6 on most evenings in the week, because they're going to be busy. They're going to have other things to do. So just understanding simple things like that. And as you build a relationship with them, you'll get to understand. They'll share things with you about what they're working on. They'll share things about things that are going on within the organisation, or if they're working on a story, or if there's something going on that they're dealing with. Sometimes personally as well, you get to understand that they're grumpy because they've got stuff going on with the family, or in their lives that isn't related to work. But everyone has bad days, so understanding that that's they have the same stresses and strains as everybody else does. That really helps, because you can deal with journalists understanding the environment and why they might be stressed, or why they might ring you last minute, and just be able to deal with them and understand, because a lot of people don't understand journalists and think they're being unreasonable, when in reality they're only doing what they're paid to do. So it all goes back to this again as well. So it's the right message to the right audience at the right time via the right channel. And one of the things about dealing with journalists these days is where most of what they used to do before was text-based. It was typed with an image, with a photograph that you could send them. When I first started, you actually had to mail people photographs. You try and tell that to people coming in the industry now, and they look at you like, it's back in the dark ages. Why couldn't you send them a file? Well, because when I started, most people had dial-up. You sent them a file that was bigger than about 5 kilobits on dial-up. You get a very rude phone call from them saying, what have you done? You've crashed my system. You've lost 30 minutes of their day while their system rebooted, and they got back up and they lost whatever work. So it's about understanding that they're working in a multimedia age now, that you can send them images, you can send them files. I recommend creating an area on the site that you have the images and you send them to there to download, rather than sending them unsolicited, because sometimes they get caught in spam traps and sometimes they have very small filters. So the same issues still apply, albeit slightly different file sizes. But create an area on your site that is dedicated to the press, that provides them, when you send them a release, you send them to it in rich text, you don't send it formatted, and so you send it in the body of the email rather than sending them an attachment. And you send them links where they can get access to photographs. Video is always good for websites. Very few PR people, very few companies send journalists or give them the opportunity to use video, whereas most journalists would kill for a good piece of video. But it's got to be stuff that adds value to their audience. It can't be a promotional video. It has to be something which actually adds value. But if you give journalists the opportunity to get hold of a good piece of video, then most of the journalists will take it from you. And it will also differentiate you from everybody else that's just send them text, because you have something which adds a bit of life to the story. And it's the same with audio. If you can get some audio, certainly for radio, I'll upload a template so that you can access it. If you're going to do radio, don't send radio newsrooms a press release. Send them a cue sheet. It's essentially the same thing. It's stylistically different, but it also is set up in a way that they can actually use it without ever having to do anything. You send them a cue sheet, they can drop it into the broadcast management system they have for content, and as quickly as they can copy and paste it, it's ready for them to use. And if you send them a small audio file to go with it, that is the piece of audio that goes with the story, you've given them a ready-made story. They don't have to work for it. As long as it's not promotional, as long as it meets all of the other requirements, that it's relevant, it adds value to their audience, it's good quality, then you're increasing your chances of them using it, because it's what they would have to create. If you can create it for them, you just save them 20 minutes. Picking up the phone, saying it's a really interesting story, have you got somebody I can talk to? Okay, so can we set up a call? They do the call, which takes 10 minutes, then they've got to edit it, got to find the clip they want. If you can save them that and provide it already packaged for them, it's a better than average chance that they'll use it. Of course, nobody realises that. We live in a multimedia age now, but the majority of things that get sent by companies to journalists is press releases in text form, maybe with an image. So there are little ways you can differentiate there.